Welcome to Rise and Thrive Women, journeying from surviving to thriving after abuse. We're your hosts, Susie and Heather, and we're so glad you're here. If you've experienced the heartache of toxic relationships, you know the feeling of being lost, broken, and unsure of where to turn next. And this show is for you.
We're here to inspire, educate, and empower women like you, no matter where you are on your healing journey. Together, we'll challenge misconceptions surrounding domestic abuse, explore practical solutions, and listen to incredible survivor stories that remind us that there is a brighter future always possible.
Awesome. Here we are. Happy Thursday. Before we jump into our episode today, which we're really excited about, we wanted to share something else that's really special and near and dear to our hearts, which is our Rise and Thrive Women's membership program. You want to talk a little bit more about that, Heather?
Yes. So it's a private off social media space for women healing from narcissistic abuse, whether you're still in it, figuring out how to leave, or rebuilding afterwards.
And when you get into the community, you have access to all the workshops we've ever done, plus any future workshops we're doing, which we have one coming up next month on nervous system regulation. And we charge $50 just for that workshop alone. So as a member, you get access to things like that. We also have bi-monthly coaching sessions, group coaching sessions. So those occur on a regular basis. We also have a private community forum where women can just share what's going on in their lives, get support. Sometimes we drop funny things in the chat. So it's just a great, supportive, safe community that's private, like Heather said. We've calculated the value of the community on an annual basis is around $3,000 with everything that we have in there. But it's only $19 a month for our members who join. And there's a free 7-day trial. So you can get in there risk-free and kind of poke around and see what all we have in there. We have a lot of training modules as well. So no matter what stage of your relationship you're in, whether you're still in it or recently got out of an abusive relationship, or even further down the path of healing, there's something in there for everybody.
Yes, yes, yes. And like Susie said, the value that you're getting for $19 a month. I mean, our workshops alone are worth, we charge $49 per workshop. And when you subscribe for the membership, you get it free for $19 a month with all of the other benefits that she just mentioned. Anyhow,
Yeah.
the link is in the show notes on Susie's channel and mine too. So we would love to welcome you in there. Go, like she said, it's 7-day free trial. Within that 7 days, you get your welcome call with Susie and I both. So you get a risk-free chance of getting in there, seeing all the materials that we have in there, and meeting Susie and I one-on-one. So
Check it out.
yes, ma'am. So just jumping into our topic today, if you have ever asked yourself, why can't I leave if I'm this miserable? You are not alone. Trauma bonds are powerful. And if you have any questions along the way about like, what does this trauma bond word mean? Drop it in your comments. Susie or myself will get to them and answer them as we can. So if you're unfamiliar with terms, please ask along the way and we will answer. So anyways, trauma bonds are powerful, especially for women who are used to solving problems, fixing things. How many women love fixing things and working on projects and have decided, this relationship is a perfect project for me?
Yeah.
But we're also used to succeeding. So emotional abuse doesn't operate on logic. It operates on fear, confusion, chemical addiction, believe it or not, and cycles of abuse and or manipulation. And so today we are going to unpack why so many brilliant women stay and how to start breaking free. So.
Yes, such an important topic, and I think we've said this before on our different episodes we've done. Um, we hear so often from women that we work with these feelings of shame around like, how have I been in this relationship as long as I have? Why did I stay as long as I did? I'm smarter than that. I'm a successful person. Like, how could I let this happen to me? So I think you and I are both really passionate about this topic because we want to break that, I don't know, the stigma and help people feel less ashamed, because there are valid reasons why we stay in these relationships as long as we do. So
Yeah,
we thought we would start by just explaining more about what a trauma bond is. because, like you said, the trauma bond is really at the core of why it's so difficult to leave, especially when there aren't those bigger constraints like financial dependence or not having being able to move or whatever it might be. The trauma bond is that reason oftentimes women struggle to leave their relationship. So the trauma bond,
I'm
what's
sorry,
that?
Susie. I just talked to a woman a couple days ago who said those words. She was like, I don't know why. I'm successful. I'm financially, independent.
Secure, right?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
have anything that's really holding me back. I just feel stuck and I'm here.
right. I just
So
feel stuck. Yeah, it's such a common thing. Just that feeling of having this constant inner conflict about staying or leaving and just feeling like you can't make a decision. So yeah, we wanted to spend a little time just talking about what a trauma bond is for those of you who aren't as familiar with that term. And essentially, it's formed through the abuse cycle. So the cycle of abuse is a constant, ongoing cycle in abusive relationships. Um, moving from a phase of idealization, kind of love bombing, to devaluation, and then oftentimes discarding. And discarding can look like, if the relationship continues on, it could look like somebody giving the silent treatment or just, yeah, really devaluing that person and kind of casting them aside temporarily. So that's what that can look like. And then repeating that cycle all over again. So again, it's idealize, devalue, discard, and repeat. And it's a vicious cycle that just continues to go over and over again in these abusive relationships. And in that cycle of abuse is what is called intermittent reinforcement. And what that is, that's really another foundational part of the trauma bond. And what that means is in an abusive relationship, like that cycle of abuse describes, things aren't always bad. There are periods of good times, and sometimes it can be excessive, like excessive love bombing, excessive apologies, which pulls the victim back into the relationship time and time again. So it's that intermittent reinforcement or kind of giving of breadcrumbs along the way that keep people in it. And all of this dynamic, like you mentioned, forms a biochemical addiction. So when those times are good in relationships, you get the hits of dopamine, the serotonin, those feel good chemicals that are produced in your brain. But then on the flip side, when things are not good and the abuse is happening, your body releases a great amount of cortisol, the stress hormone. So your body becomes accustomed to these these bursts of these different chemicals and becomes addicted to it. So there are a lot of things happening in your body that form this trauma bond and keep you feeling stuck. And that's why you can have such conflicting feelings of, I feel love for this person, but I know they're hurting me. So that's kind of what a trauma bond is. Is there anything that you'd add to that, Heather?
I think the one thing that I would add is a lot of times these relationships, not always, but oftentimes these relationships start with a sharing of trauma. And for those
Mhm.
who just don't identify with the word trauma, let's say you are very vulnerable, you've gotten out of a really nasty marriage, or you're just having a hard time with a breakup, and you are on, you're chatting up with someone on a dating app, and you guys are exchanging stories of your past nightmares with your exes. That is an exchange of trauma, whether you identify with that word or not. And with abusive or emotional manipulative people, or people who are going to, who are seeking out new victims, they are taking all of that information and they are weaving a mask for themselves so that they can
Mhm.
present to you a knight in shining armor. And so
Mhm.
whenever we talk about trauma bonds, I want to kind of highlight that a lot of times these relationships start with the exchange of trauma. And because you feel like you they fill a need or a hole or whatever term you want to
Hmm.
use. You attach to that person, you connect with that person on a highly emotional level during
Yeah.
that idolization phase that Susie was talking about. So that's the only thing that I would add is a lot of times if you reflect back on how the hell did I get here? If you think back to the beginning, a lot of times you will remember, oh my gosh, I told them all of this information about my past. So they
Yeah.
tried to mimic all the opposite on the other end of the spectrum for
Mm.
me. So,
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That makes total sense.
let's talk a little bit about why smart women are especially vulnerable. This is a really, I think that we need to talk about this more, right? Because women, we are fixers. Mentally, we love solving problems as a way of survival. We also have a high tolerance for stress, over functioning, emotional resilience. Um, and when you take those traits in a driven woman who is committed to a relationship and committed to making it want to work, it keeps you in this cycle, this trauma bond cycle, because you don't want to let it go. Like you are dedicated to fixing this. And not only are you dedicated to fixing it, you have a high tolerance for stress and high
Yeah,
function.
absolutely.
Success in other areas make failure here unbearable. So, if you're a highly successful person and you feel like you've succeeded in a lot of different areas of your life, admitting to people outside of your relationship that it's failing feels unbearable, and it more so highlights an internal issue with having to admit failure or defeat in something. So
Mhm.
that's typically a crutch as to or I yeah a crutch as to why people stay, right? Like
Yeah,
admitting failure makes you feel, it makes you personally feel like the failure, not the relationship as an entity on its own.
right.
And then internalizing the idea that leaving means losing, that is a huge one. There are so many men and women really, but the focus here is women. There are so many women who look at losing a person or leaving a person as losing a person. And a
Mhm.
lot of that, some of that comes from gaslighting, like hearing from your partner, you're never going to find anybody as good as me. Think of all the things that I do, all of the things that I have done. You're never going to find that in another person. And so there's like this illusion of losing something.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I think that we internalize that on a level that maybe we don't acknowledge. And so I want to say that if you are listening to this and you feel that on any certain level, leaving doesn't mean that you're losing a person. As if you consider losing headache and constant emotional conflict and back and forth and tug of war, if you consider that a loss, let's talk.
Yeah, let's reevaluate that
Yeah,
a little
let's
bit.
talk.
Yeah, no, I mean that so many of those things resonate with me, and I think especially the bit about this woman who on the outside has it all, who has the big job, who is balancing it all with, children and doing all the things, and um that person typically does have a pretty high tolerance for stress. I've worked with many women who are C-suite executives who are juggling so many balls, and they've got that ability to handle a lot of stress. They've got a high level of emotional resilience, and they grit through it, they grin and bear it, and they try to make it work.
Yeah.
So that really resonated a lot. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about, so you touched on some of these things, but a little bit more about the psychology of why women stay. Yeah, I think you touched on this a little bit, but just overall that hope, the hope that the person will change. It kind of goes back to that cycle of abuse when, when there is that distinct pattern, after abuse happens, there is typically that period of remorse, these big apologies, promises that to change, things are going to get better. So we tell ourselves maybe this time it'll be different. So there's that hope, that we cling on to. Um, I also think, a lot of highly successful women grew up hearing messaging like, "We never give up. When we commit to something, we stick with it." And they've gotten as far in their lives as they have because that's their value system, So of course it's going to apply to the relationship that they're in, that we don't give up on this. I'm going to try everything I can to make this work before I throw in the towel.
Yeah.
So that's another big thing. That sunk cost fallacy, I think you kind of alluded to that, but we invest a lot in these relationships, a lot of time, um, emotional energy. We've tried therapy. We've committed to this, and the idea of walking away from that and kind of losing all of that investment into something can be really scary. Um, there's also that fear of judgment. What will people think of me, if I leave this relationship, or if they find out that I was tolerating the things I was tolerating? There's always that fear of what people will think. Um, so yeah, I think those are kind of the main kind of mental gymnastics that we play when we're trying to decide whether or not to walk away from something that we know is hurting us. So
Yeah, I think the sunk cost fallacy is a really big one. Um,
yeah.
Over and over and over again, I hear people say, I've put so much time and effort into this relationship that if I walk away now, the biggest fear is their partner is going to go be that person that they wanted for all
Mm,
the eternity of their relationship. Their biggest
yeah.
fear is they are going to be that person for someone else when they have put in all the work on this
Mm.
person. Um,
Ooh, I'm glad you called that out. Yes.
and well, I mean, it's like
100%.
over and over and over again, the same thing.
Yeah.
And I want to just say this: if that is a thought in your mind, I would say, why would you want to spend so much of your time pouring into someone else who is not pouring back into you?
Mhm.
And what would your life look like if you had the capacity to pour into yourself like that? Or, down the
Yeah.
road, you had a relationship where it was more equal.
Mhm.
That shouldn't be like your focal point when you're trying to navigate leaving. But I do want to, I want you to maybe take a step back if that is your line of thinking and ask yourself, if that is my line of thinking, what would my life look like if I poured half of that ambition or half of that effort into myself and my own dreams or what I want my life to look like 2, 5, 10 years from now?
Mhm. For sure. And we can tell you from all of our research and experience that it's if you are with somebody who is abusive, who's narcissistic, the chances of them truly changing and being that different person that you're concerned that they're going to turn into and you're going to miss out on after the relationship ends, we can tell you that there's a very slim chance of that actually happening. So
Yeah. So let's talk about how you break this bond or illusion or whatever you want to call it. And I think step number one is naming it.
Mhm.
You're trauma bonded. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you are a fool. It doesn't mean that whatever negative line of thinking that you associate with labeling that, um, naming it for what it is part of the process and figuring out where do we go next. And to Susie's point a second ago, she said abuse, and she said narcissistic relationships or narcissistic abuse. And because we're talking about labeling things and naming it, if you don't, like, if you hear that word and you automatically disassociate or you don't identify with that, that's okay. But if you do resonate more with knowing that there's some sort of level of emotional manipulation, whether you think it's intentional or not, it's worth exploring and listening, right? So if you're not clear on exactly what it is, that's step number one, is figuring out what is the label. What's the label? What is this? What is this that I'm experiencing? And we label it. Um,
And you even have a quiz people can take, right, Heather? Is that still available?
I do.
Or
I don't know.
okay.
So I didn't expect so many people to take it, and
Okay.
I'm maxed out. I
Okay.
don't know.
I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember if that was still live or not.
I do actually. So if you're watching this, you should be able to either send me an email or even book a free 30-minute strategy
Yeah.
call. I think Susie has one too. Whoever you're listening to and whomever you're resonating with most. If you're interested, send me an email. I can send the quiz to you.
Yeah.
No problem.
And we could give you clarity on a 30-minute call.
Yep.
We're confident in our ability to do that too.
Right.
Yeah. We don't need a quiz.
So that's number one, is name it. Name the thing. Step number two is reconnect with your body through nervous system work. And that's probably a lot of words that someone who hasn't, gone through psychology or trauma recovery would know. So nervous system work, if you're dysregulated and you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells, or you feel this tightness in your chest and you're anxious about stuff, like, those are indications that your nervous system is on high alert and you need to start kind of reconnecting with your body and exploring that.
And come to our workshop next month because we'll be giving more information on that. Yeah.
And if you want it for $20 cheaper, just join the Rise and Thrive group and snag it for half price. So step number three is build safe relationships that reinforce reality. And I don't expect, honestly, if you're still in the process of just trying to figure out what the heck is going on, a safe relationship feels, the most simplistic way of me putting this is, a safe relationship is someone that you know that you can go and talk to, and you don't have to fear them judging you or telling you what their opinion or what you should do. A safe relationship is someone who you know with 100% certainty that they are not going to judge where you are right now. So, so build safe relationships that reinforce that reality. And if you don't have that, Susie and I have that for you, or we have that space for you.
Absolutely.
Step four, create physical and emotional distance. So the reason behind that is, and I don't want people to mistake that for emotional manipulation, because there are narcissistic people who will withhold affection. This isn't the same thing. You need to create some sort of distance just to get clarity, right? And even if it means having the conversation, like, I need a little space right now to figure out how to untangle my thoughts and my emotions, so that you can come to the table later and say, okay, here's what happened, and you get that clarity. So create that physical distance, because of the trauma bond that we talked about and that Susie talked about in the beginning. So create that physical space and emotional distance for yourself to kind of get your bearings on what the heck is happening. And then step five, get support. Don't do it alone. If you feel like you're a burden to, and I'm not saying you are, a lot of this is just what we hear over and over and over again. I just feel like all I do is talk to my friends and family about all of this crap that's going on in my relationship, and I'm tired of feeling like I'm a burden on them. So there are support groups. If you're into like in-person groups, I'm sure you can get on Meetup and go find a support group that's in person. You can join an online community. Like, I'm not going to beat the dead horse about Rise and Thrive Women, but we would love to have you. And there are therapists that are equipped to deal with this. Just make sure that you've done your research and you've read your reviews. But support is going to be key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you add anything to that?
No, I mean, the only thing that was going through my mind is if anyone's watching this who has left the relationship and is struggling to, um, maybe has struggled to not continue to go back to the relationship or finds themselves like intensely ruminating about the relationship, there are things that you can do as well. I think one of the number one things is make sure you go no contact. If you share children, go as low contact as you can, because a big part of the trauma bond is just not having that interaction any longer. So you really have to protect yourself and cut that person out of your life and not continue to get sucked back in, with these different manipulation tactics. So that was really the only other thing that was going through my mind.
I
So,
love that. Hillary commented on Instagram, turning point for sure is learning about trauma bonds and recognizing its role in your life. Trauma bond is no joke and such a powerful thing. Preach,
yeah.
sister.
For sure. Yeah, I think when you can take a step back and just get out of that shame mode of like beating yourself up for being in the relationship or staying longer than you feel you should have, just understanding like what's happening in your body, that there truly are like chemical things going on and things happening in
Yep,
your brain. It just helps you look at it more as, I don't know, you can get a game plan together. You can tackle it head on rather than just feeling like powerless to the whole thing. So
I love that.
that knowledge is huge. So thanks, Hillary. Is that Hillary from our Rise and Thrive group?
Yes, yes, it
Oh,
is.
one of our Rise and Thrive ladies. Hi,
Yes.
Hillary.
We are going to schedule some time to talk about or talk with her again too. For those who
Yes.
may or may, those who follow us, have seen Hillary before, and she has graciously agreed to come back and talk a little bit about her progress. So we're excited to get that
Awesome.
on the calendar.
Yeah, we love her journey and her story. It's so inspiring. So, any other questions that you've seen come through?
I don't see any. I'm
Okay.
not. I don't see the. I'm not connected to YouTube right this minute. So if I
Okay.
can you
Yeah,
see anything?
I don't see anything from YouTube. So, if you watch this replay, feel free to comment, or ask us your questions. But we would love to hear from you if any of this
Yeah.
resonated. So,
And if anybody from anybody in Northport watching this, drop a comment, hashtag Northport. I'm just curious to know how
yay!
many of my Northport people watched it. So
I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, that was all we had, I think. Should we go ahead and close it out for today?
yes, yes, let's do it.
All right.
So thank you all for joining us on this episode of Rise and Thrive Women. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to take charge of your healing journey, whether it's a new perspective, renewed hope, or the courage to move forward. It is something worth celebrating.
And remember, your story is still unfolding and your past doesn't define you. Within you lies strength, power, and limitless potential. Embrace it. Trust and follow your intuition with courage. Be bold, be brave, and always trust yourself. Until we meet again, take care, rise above, and thrive. You've got this.
Bye,
See you
everybody.
next time.